be the first man onto the 2,000-meter run back to the North Park here at the Alliant Energy Center.
Of course, I want to deep dive into that, and I want to see what's motivated you to create that forum, which I think is extremely pioneering, coming from someone like yourself, is that you're at the pointy end of the spear of athletic performance. Of course, there are lots of people talking about low carb nutrition and carnivore diet and keto.
Dean Linder-Leighton is off. 2,000 meters between him and his first career event win at the CrossFit Games. That is your leader in this event, Dean Linder-Leighton, his first ever CrossFit Games appearance, and looking for his first career event win.
And all by himself.
He is so far ahead.
All by himself coming to this. It's going to be an amazing feeling for him coming into the crowd.
He could walk to the finish line and still win this event right now.
He actually could.
Dean Linder-Leighton, in his first ever CrossFit Games appearance, will win his first ever event, and he will be 100 points richer. Dean Linder-Leighton.
That took me probably 3 years to really learn how to go 100% in terms of like fully utilizing the ATP energy pathways. Because my 80% was my 100% perceived was probably 80% physiological.
Dean Linder-Leighton with a quicker transition, who will be in the lead as his name highlighted in blue, the number 10 indicating how many reps he has completed. Everybody else will be in red with a minus number showing how far they are behind the lead. One lane above him is Dean Linder-Leighton in the blue tank top. They are the top three. It's going to be Logan Collins, the first man to advance to round number 3. 13 parallel handstand push-ups at this 14-inch deficit, then 13 more deadlifts before the overhead walking lunge.
You look at people like, say, Brent Frykowski, who come games weekend, he's eating 800-900 grams of carbohydrates a day. And he's super lean, and you're like, okay, well, so I was always trying to achieve that over multiple years, like building my metabolism, and it would just be like one day I would feel quite lean and then the next day I'd put on 3 kilos and just
Feel slow and bloated. Yes.
And then my asthma would be up and down, and obviously that's just a direct link to the inflammation that's going on and causing
the energy department. Keep an eye on Dean Linder-Leighton in the blue shirt. You saw him a moment ago, the biggest athlete in the field. He might have the easiest time with those kettlebells as Collins has him back up in the air. Final 45 seconds. Anderson and Linder-Leighton are not far behind Collins. And we got a bit of a race in the final 30 seconds for the lead.
In your training, this is probably a critical question that some members and CrossFitters will want to hear, is that so in your day-to-day training, pre-season or off-season, what would your carbohydrate load be? Like what would your macros be in terms of calories, grams of carbs, grams of fat, grams of protein?
Stride for second between Linder-Leighton in the blue shirt center of the screen, Cody Anderson in the green tank top. Neither of them able to beat the top.
Dan, how you going? Fantastic. Right on cue, buddy.
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. I've never met you at all before, Dean, but of course I know about your athletic endeavours, and I can say it's pretty impressive, to say the least. So I'm pretty excited about talking to you today. Thank you for sharing your time with me.
Yeah, no worries. It's going to be it's good to chat to people that are like yourself, like-minded and in the same field, pursuing the same things with nutrition and fitness. And
so I suppose it was pretty serendipitous, just waking up in the morning, and I was just scrolling through some of the Facebook stuff that I follow, and I saw that little post come up on the Australian CrossFitters page, and it just had that the thing that caught my attention was the cover profile of all the the different types of animal meats you had. I think you've got some fish and pork and beef,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and it was animal based Nutrition Australia. I thought, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know initially that it was you putting it up, and I had a look at it, had a read of a couple of the little messages there, and my brain started just going ding 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 ding. This is different, and then sort of obviously got in contact with you from there on, and obviously we've had a bit of a chat over the text messages over the weekend, and here we are today. So of course I want to deep dive into that, and I want to see what's motivated you to create that forum, which I think is extremely pioneering, coming from someone like yourself, who's at the you're at the pointy end of the spear of athletic performance. Of course, there are lots of people talking about low carb nutrition and carnivore diet and keto nutritional ketosis, but I think coming from a elite level athlete, that's very uncommon. It's probably breaking going against the grain. Would you say?
Yeah, definitely, and at least in our sport, the CrossFit world, definitely 100%.
Yeah. So we definitely want to get deep into that later. But I think just to start off with, there's going to be lots of people listening to this podcast, this little video chat, who probably don't know too much about you. So should we just talk a little bit about your background, Dean, and your profile, and where you've come from to get you to the heights of your athletic career? What's your background in terms of getting into this type of sport?
Yeah, for sure. So for anyone that hears this or watches this that's not familiar with CrossFit as a sport, my background really comes from surf lifesaving, is what I did most of my childhood, as well as like AFL and stuff like that.
So did you sort of love all sports when you're growing up? If you're running season, you do cross country, and cricket, you do cricket, and then footy, and then surfing, or did you sort of zone in on a few sports?
Yeah, I think I sort of zoned in. So my childhood, we actually spent probably about 5 years from the age that I was about 5 till 10 traveling around Australia. I grew up in a lot of remote areas, like out in the Red Bluff in Western Australia and stuff like that. And so I didn't have the conventional childhood as a lot of people, like growing up doing all those sports. But surfing and water sports was always a massive part.
Yeah.
So, I always gravitated to that. And then when we came back from traveling and sort of situated in one place, I actually got overweight. So my sort of love for training just came from trying to lose weight and bodybuilding, really.
Yeah. What age would you have been then, Dean, when you felt that you were overweight? Like teenager or? Yeah,
like hard looking back, but probably around like year 5.
Okay.
Year 5, so I don't know how.
So late primary school.
Yeah.
Okay. You were not.
And it was as soon as we came back from traveling. I don't know whether it was a stress related thing, or just a big change in diet and all of that sort of stuff from going from living out in these remote areas and doing a lot of fishing and stuff like that and being active all day, and then you come back to going to school and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and probably were your parents very conscious of diet, or was it a topic of conversation at home as to what was healthy and what wasn't healthy? And
not really. Not really. I think they, to their best knowledge, like most people, think they're doing the right things. Looking back on it, it was horrific. Knowing what I know now. But it's your typical Australian family of the time. you have takeout once a week or something like that.
Yep,
And then the rest of your home cooked meals, spaghettis and bologneses and fruits and stuff like that. So,
so like
their ability, they were doing the healthy.
cereal in the morning and orange juice in the morning, and
but we didn't have Cocoa Pops, didn't have and stuff like that. It was cornflakes, Nutri-Grain, the healthy cereals. So
they're supposedly healthy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, day in, day out, and it catches up with you. And so you felt like you're a little bit overweight, and then that sort of redirected you towards training for weight loss. Is that right?
Yeah. So I was overweight, and I was also diagnosed asthmatic when I was about 6 years old. I had an asthma attack.
Okay.
So I had both of those things going on, and so we were in WA, and then when we moved back, we lived in Victoria. So each winter, obviously, my asthma would flare up, and then as I gained weight, my asthma flare ups would get even worse.
Yes.
So yeah, really, it just came from. I mean, I went through all like the bullying and stuff like that, as you do if you're a bit overweight, and it really just came from Dad said, we should start getting you into the gym, and I just fell in love with really bodybuilding, and was what I liked because everyone that you sort of looked at had the physiques that you were trying to achieve at the time.
Yeah.
So that and then surf lifesaving as well in the summer. So
okay, so you wanted to look good, and then from the aesthetic side of training, looking good, like Mr. Universe, and then the surf lifesaving added in that sort of capacity to do work, and then that flowed on into your older teenage years, and then when did you start doing CrossFit? I heard or read somewhere that you were thinking of joining the SAS, Defence Force. Is that right? That you thought SAS would be?
Yeah, definitely. So when I was probably about 17, I quit doing any types of bodybuilding, just went really into my surf lifesaving as a sport.
Yep.
And yes, at the same time, I was looking at, it was the first year that they were doing the direct entry for the commandos.
Right.
So I wanted to do that. Or really what I was aiming for is to go and be a clearance diver. But at the time, there was no way of doing that if you had ever been diagnosed with asthma. So,
right.
And that's going down that recruitment entry scenario is how I first heard about CrossFit. It was actually one of the recruiters said, hey, if you want to get yourself in shape to go to the commandos, you should do CrossFit.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
A lot of the guys in here, that's how they train. And obviously, going back in the day, it was very much a US military based, that's where it was popular.
Yeah.
And so that's how I first found out about it. And then when I didn't get through into the commandos because I was asthmatic, I was looking into CrossFit, and the first year when it was going on was the 2012 games when they had it on ESPN for the first time.
Oh, yep.
And so I pretty much sat down and watched that over the weekend on Foxtel, and then quit surf lifesaving and found CrossFit in Geelong. That's that.
So I think that's where they had like the swimming event, and then they had to jump out of the pool and do muscle ups at the end of the pool. Was it something like?
It might have even been the year before that.
Right.
Yeah, it was the first year. It was on ESPN2, and I just remember watching the whole thing and being like, "I'm going to go there."
Yeah. I vaguely remember watching a similar thing on YouTube and going, "Holy crap! What is this? What is this insane sport?" And how come these human beings look like Superman, and are doing this wide variety of activities? I've never seen any sport like this. And it immediately was very appealing because it just looked like they had so multi-dimensional abilities. But I was still a long way off my commencement of CrossFit. But so that was enough to get you. What did you do? Just look up your nearest box and just rock up and sign up for a intro session? Or
Yeah, 100%. So it was Christmas sort of at the time. So I was going away on a camping trip, and the gym was closed anyway. And I literally ended the camping trip early to come back on the first day that they opened for the new year after the Christmas break.
Yeah.
Did a trial, signed up that day, and then did the fundamentals. I just started training twice a day from day one. Yeah.
So which box was that then? Where was that at?
CrossFit Geelong.
In
it was the first CrossFit
Victoria.
gym in Geelong.
Wow. Okay. And how did you find those workouts? Did you sort of take to it pretty easy, or did you have the natural ability to move well when you first started, or did you need a lot of guidance from the coaches?
No, I think I picked it up pretty well. I was obviously pretty fit cardiovascularly coming from surf lifesaving, and then we'd done stuff like in surf lifesaving, like butterfly pull-ups and stuff like that were all parts. Or I knew how to do that, not as good as what I learnt to do them, but there was already that kipping and stuff like that. So and had good balance from ski paddling and all that sort of stuff. So I picked it up pretty quick. And the biggest part was just the transition of the stimulus on my body and all the joints, like all the pushing, pressing, tendonitis in the elbows and the wrists and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that was the biggest, hardest part.
Getting accustomed to that power output in such a short time frame. It's like, a 5-minute workout or a 3-minute workout versus a ski paddle, that might be 15 minutes or something like that on a board or an Ironman type of event.
15 minutes, all the way up to 2 hours.
2 hours, yeah. And just getting the intensity would have been quite different as well, like that intensity, feeling that breathlessness, that sort of point where you feel like you can't go on but you have to. Was that
I think
completely different to life-saving?
Completely different, and that took me probably 3 years to really learn how to go 100% in terms of like fully utilizing the ATP energy pathways, because my 80% was my 100% perceived was probably 80% physiological. Because if you go 100% in, like, say, a surf lifesaving race, the shortest race you're doing is probably 10 minutes. So 100% effort over 10 minutes is not 100% in terms of pure output. So you take something like that into a 1-minute event, and that was a big thing for me to learn how to, train that energy system properly, and then just learn to actually go that fast. So
all right, so you sort of, that was your budding CrossFit career then at CrossFit Geelong. And then what did people sort of recognize your talent? Like, did they recognize that ability very early on? Like, the coaches and stuff like that? Did they see this? When did you start thinking, I've got potential here to be on the world stage with this sport? Like, when did that sort of start to emerge?
Yeah, I think maybe other people could see more than I could see, because I was always very hard on myself. Like, so I guess like my rate of progression was obviously a lot faster, but I came from another sport as well. It's probably when I made regionals the first time through the Open, only a few months, the first time it came around, was then when before that I had gone and competed. At the time, the big competition in Australia was called Schwartz's CrossFit competition in Melbourne. And I think I'd sort of probably been in CrossFit about 6 months at the time. And I entered that competition as my first CrossFit competition.
6 months into your career, 6 months into your CrossFit.
Wow. So I entered that just as a complete nobody. And, at the time it was big. It had like Rob Fort, Brandon Swan, all these guys who were games athletes.
Yeah.
coming down to compete. And over the course of the weekend, I was in the final in the top heat by the end of the weekend. So
Yeah. Rookie. Yeah. Who's this guy?
yeah, so I think it was at that stage. I was like, oh, okay, I could probably fit enough if I learn all the Olympic lifting and all that sort of stuff to be pretty good.
That's right there. Okay, that's pretty cool. And then the Open comes around. You back then you had to be top 30 in Australia to get a call up to go to Wollongong and compete on the at the Gong. That would have been a fantastic experience to sort of top 30 in Australia.
Yeah, so made that qualification, and then went to the first year and ended up finishing 15th place in the first region.
Right.
Yeah,
so that you need to be top 5, don't you? Top 5 to get
top
to
5.
to get to the games. So your first games was what, in 2018, was it? 2018.
Yeah, first CrossFit Games.
First CrossFit game, and that was in Madison. So you didn't ever compete at Carson?
No, it was the second year in Madison they'd done it.
Second year in Madison, yeah, okay. So that's an amazing feat to get to the games.
So the year that I qualified was the last year that we had that traditional open regionals, the game. So I was super happy that I made that.
Got to experience that system of finding the fittest on earth. Yeah, amazing. And so what was that experience like? Getting to the games and the hype. I've been to Madison twice, and just being in the crowd, it's just such a vibe there. I can't imagine what it's like to be there as a competitor. The first year there, you're sort of rookie, and how does that play on your mind psychologically, being in around such caliber of athletes and trying to perform as well?
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome because it was sort of a validation of yourself as a professional athlete going over to America to compete in the sport and all of that. But on the same side, by the time I'd made it, I'd been in CrossFit for about 6 years, and I'd been to regionals since 2012, 13, 14, 15, didn't compete 16. So, but I'd been around, I knew who everyone was, So it was cool to be there in person, but at the same time, I was quite confident in my own abilities and experience.
Did you sort of go there as a group of Aussies, or was it quite, everyone was quite, people quite private in their preparation when they get there, or do you sort of you're all sort of hang together in a big Aussie
no, I think
Airbnb, or what's it like?
No, it comes down to coaching, like whoever your coaching group was. So I was with Brute Strength at the time, so it was all those athletes at Cara and the rest of them, and then you had your other athletes maybe under Rob Downton, or James Newbury was working with the other group who do Pat Vellner and stuff like that. So you sort of get segregated into those more than countries.
Yeah. Okay. So you still got a team of people around you to sort of bounce things off and just sort of relieve any stresses or anxieties associated with things. You're not there and isolated and just waiting for Dave Castro to throw things at you. You can sort of vent
there's a little bit
teammate.
Little bit, yeah. I mean, kind of it is like still a part of the games as they try and build in those elements of suspense by not telling you things, leaving things to the last minute. And then, that there is that other aspect of it that at the end of the day is an individual sport if you're not in the team side. So,
sure.
As much as there is, CrossFit's such a weird thing. As much as it is, me and you could have the same coach and be competing, but we'll both have very different strategies for the same workout. So as much as you can share, it's still very separate in that regard.
You got to play it. You play every event to your strength, to maximize the outcome for your personal abilities.
Yeah.
And what I know you did very well in. You were doing quite well in those games, weren't you? You were sort of up there in the final heat quite a lot, and I think you excelled. You won an event there. You took out the swimming event.
Yeah, I took the Madison Tripolis event, which was obviously the swim, board, paddle, and then run.
Yeah.
I should.
You didn't just take it out. Yeah, I think you crushed it. Fikowski was behind you by about five minutes or something like that.
Yeah, they're a fair distance. Yeah.
You would have been pretty lonely out there in the front. How did that feel coming out of the water there? And I think you came off the paddleboard first, and then into the run. What's that feel like when you're leading the pack of the fittest men on earth?
It was running into. So we went for the swim. I knew who was sort of going to be fast on the swim, and I knew that with the paddleboard coming out, as long as I got out of the water in the top 10, I'd be pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what I did. I just swam with Brent Fikowski. I think I got out of the water about 4th.
Yeah.
Got onto the boards, and then it was pretty easy to paddle away on the board.
You felt pretty comfortable on the board there.
Yeah, and I'm a pretty good runner. So then we got out of the water, and I sort of extended my lead in the run.
Yes.
And the coolest moment was coming into the stadium, obviously with nobody around you, because they're the moments that you always watch of, say, like Froning walking across the finish line, like Chipper or in an event or whatever, and he's like, well, wouldn't it be cool to have one of those experiences and walk across the finish line? So
that's something that I'm sure will stay with you forever, that feeling running into the stadium there. Amazing. And then, so how did you end up faring in those games? There was there was no cuts or anything like that in that it was just
no cuts
all the way to the end.
Yeah, so like you said, most of the weekend I was in the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last workout sort of didn't go to plan and all that, so I ended up 14th. Which is a good result, I think, on your first year.
Rookie,
Yeah, it was a big learning experience. The biggest experience was just how serious the large majority of those people take the sport.
Yeah.
So from throughout each year I go, we do a month in Salt Lake City as a training camp.
Mm-hmm.
And just the step up in seriousness of which people treat it as being a professional athlete when you go over there was the biggest learning curve, because even when you sort of go to regionals over here, everyone's sort of half serious about it, I think.
Yeah, they've still got their day jobs. That a lot of people have still got other commitments. As compared to Fraser and Froning and all those top guys, they're just full time, 100% committed to CrossFit training.
Yeah, and there's big sponsors and big teams behind people, and it's just not something that I'd experienced until
you get to that level. Hang on.
Getting there, Nazar.
Yeah. Hang on, Dean. So you just cut out there. Say that again, mate. We just got a freeze frame there. You got me?
Yeah. So that was the biggest. Yep.
So
that was the biggest takeaway. Was just that massive step up in seriousness of the sport.
Yeah. And did that then change the way you approach CrossFit after that experience? Like, did you realize that if I'm going to continue in this sport and take it seriously, I've got to change anything? Did that?
Yeah, I mean, I came back and I was very optimistic. I thought I could definitely win the CrossFit Games moving forward after the first year. physically, I feel like I had the potential. I just need to get better at the sport.
Yep. You were the top finishing Australian male, were you?
Yep.
That year, there was
Yep.
Newbury and Khan, and you.
Royce.
So that was your that's your sort of title of fittest in Australia, fittest man in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, I claim that because especially that year, I won the Open. I came second at regionals, and then I was the top finishing at the game. So consistency-wise, I feel like that places me as the top.
Yep.
Across all the tests.
Absolutely. And even just for some of our listeners who may not be as familiar with CrossFit, for CrossFit to sort of claim that title of fittest on earth, what do you think of that? What do you think about that that accolade for Matt Fraser, Tia Claire Toomey, these guys who have just won the CrossFit Games? Do you think that that's a justified claim that the guys who win the CrossFit Games are the fittest on earth?
Yeah, I definitely think until the end of 2018, the last 2 years, I don't think there's any way to claim that at all.
Right. Simply because of the test, the way that things have tested, or the way that CrossFit Games. When I requalified in 2019, I got my invitation straight from the Open. Okay.
For finishing top 20 worldwide.
Okay. Wow.
And so that's good because it was my best Open performance, but also then.
So did you win it? Did you come first in Australia too then, or?
Baden beat me
Brown
by like 1 point. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And so
so I didn't do. So I injured my back after 2018, and I didn't compete once. I flew to Dubai to try and compete.
Yep.
Had to pull out. And then, so that was the only thing I did was the Open for a whole year.
Wow. Wow.
And then obviously the cuts and stuff like that. So, and then you had a multitude of different people qualifying from a sanctional here, a sanctional there, where there were different layouts, different workouts, different competitors. And it's like, I think the level of entry has to be the same for you to even show up.
Yeah.
I don't think you can have some of us going through the Open and qualifying that way. Some people not even doing the Open, going to a event program by anybody in wherever. And then some people going to an event program by really respected coaches competing against a stacked field.
Yep.
And then all show up and I don't think that's very fair.
Yeah. I think even there were some top level athletes, big names like Noah Olsen, who was coming close to not being able to get a spot as he was running out of sanctionals, and Fikowski as well. But yeah, I see your point there. And so how did you go in 2019? Did you unfortunately get cut early in that sort of comp, or?
Yeah, I got cut pretty much on the day where everybody else got cut.
Right. Okay.
When they took the field from the top 40 down to 10, and everyone sort of was obliterated in those two. They did 2 cuts in 2 workouts. That was me done.
Okay. Yeah. Pretty disappointing for a lot of athletes, of course, to travel all the way up there.
It's disappointing because when you, as well as being cut and the physical side of maybe better workouts coming later and not agreeing with some of the programming, put all that stuff aside. There is issues that go on behind the scenes with judging, equipment, stuff like that. That's just stuffs up as it would when you're trying to run so many people through events that haven't been tested in that exact setup.
Yeah.
And that's usually okay and forgivable over 18, 20 workouts, because the best will always come through at the end.
Yeah.
But when you're changing stuff and there might be something breaks or whatever, and that is the end of your weekend, then I don't know how they can sort of justify that.
Yeah. There's no buffer there for you to redeem yourself and prove that you have got that capacity. I suppose Dave Castro would say that that the games are not there to find the 20th fittest person on earth. They're there to find the number one fittest on earth.
Oh yeah, definitely. But there's politics that go into the sport and stuff like that. So, the one that's always talked about is Matt Fraser's sandbag falling out, or Rich Froning stepping on the line and they both didn't get the full thing, whereas other athletes who did exactly the same thing got the full penalty. And it's like, well, is that fair then? Because that would have been Matt Fraser out of the games if he had to receive the full penalty like other athletes did.
Yes, yes.
So when politics comes into play and it's not just black and white, this is how it is, then it becomes a very murky thing. And I'm sure that every single sport is like that at the top. There's always politics that come into play.
And that's sort of like an integral part of sport, I suppose. Sometimes shit happens and you've just got to roll with the punches, but hopefully that sort of thing's minimised as much as well. And what did you think of the 2020 season? You didn't have any injuries coming into 2020, or was your back had all healed up by then?
No. So pretty much what happened was I'd managed to get my back probably up to about 80%. I competed at the 2019 games. Mm-hmm. But during the first event was the run, snatch, rope climb.
Yeah.
Was on that AstroTurf big field, and it was real hot. And the AstroTurf was brand new, so it had that like hot plasticky smell. And I had like a massive asthma attack in start of the event, first round on the run. I don't know whether it was like stress or the plasticky grass or whatever. Just triggered it. And usually when I compete, I take my Ventolin onto the floor just as in case. And this time I had it because my asthma had been so good in the lead up. And so I thought I had it really under control. Anyway, I got through the event, didn't quit. I was nearly on one of the runs, I think it was the second round, when you ran out of the stadium. Over to the left was where the warm-up area was. I knew my Ventolin was just sitting there, and I nearly ran off the field.
To get the Ventolin. Yeah.
Because I couldn't breathe, and I was like, I think if I leave, though, I'll get disqualified, and that will be my game's over. Right.
You couldn't yell for your coach, or there just wasn't. You just didn't think.
There's just no time.
No.
Like, you could have, but you would have been out and cut because they're cutting from 150 to 75. So I managed to get through anyway that event, and but for the rest of the weekend, and I'd really noticed in that whole lead up, so that year. Sorry, just to give you some background, I've always struggled with getting my body composition to where I wanted it to be, and then working with different dietitians and stuff like that, and trying to push your carbs up as high as you can.
This is the advice. This was the advice that you'd been getting from your nutrition advisors.
You look at people like, say, Brent Fikowski, who come games weekend, he's eating 800-900 grams of carbohydrates a day. Wow. And he's super lean, and you're like, okay, well, so I was always trying to achieve that over multiple years, like building my metabolism, and it would just be like one day I would feel quite lean and and then the next day I'd put on 3 kilos and fat, just water weight.
Feel slow and bloated. Yes.
And then my asthma would be up and down, and obviously that's just a direct link to the inflammation that's going on and causing the water retention and stuff like that. But so we went through that, and then after those games, I just came back and I was like, I'm so unhealthy. So unhealthy.
Right. Even though
I'm world class fit.
You're on the world stage, as one of the fittest humans on the planet. And just as an aside, like anyone who makes it to that level of competition is insanely fit. Like it doesn't matter where you come in the field, you're just insanely fit. let's sort of dive into the nutrition side of things. This was a bit of an eye opener for you when your asthma was playing up, and you felt, heck, what's going on here with some people eating a kilogram of carbohydrates a day, and getting some mixed messages probably, and thinking about your own health.
From a long time ago, I'd always been interested in nutrition, and obviously, like I said, the whole sort of start of this journey was weight loss. And so I early on, like back in 2010, was reading about carbohydrates and stuff. And back in the day, what it used to be said was like carbohydrate intolerant was some people are carbohydrate intolerant is what they were sort of saying back then. And I thought, that's me. And they said, people from different parts of the world, like my mum's Swedish, so a lot of my background comes from Northern European. I say, people from those places are going to do less with grains and stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. So I was right into that way of thinking. And I had done stuff like cut all carbs and not eat any of it, or very little amounts, and had weight loss. And that's the way I was eating when I came into CrossFit. I was eating, modified paleo diet, which was predominantly meat and nowhere near enough fat, but just aiming for lots of meat. And I was really lean. And then as I started to get into more of the sporting side, you just bombarded, whether you're reading a book on sports nutrition, which is backed by everybody under the sun, or you're talking to, I worked with like 5 different nutritionists who all told me the exact same things. And you're just like, well, there's something wrong with me then that I need to figure out, because I can't eat the way that everyone's telling me to eat and not get fat. And I'm training, I was like, I train 6 hours a day and I can't get my body composition to where I want it. And I'm not eating as much as these other people. And all this sort of stuff. So then you're like, oh, have I got metabolic damage? Like, what's going on? You're trying to figure it out. Like, talk to a nutritionist, like, oh, you've been under eating for too long, so you need to like push the carbs up slowly over time. And that's just what's taught. So that's what you go with, because no matter who you talk to, and you look at how the champions of every sport are eating, and they all have the correct body composition, you're like, well, I've just there's something wrong with me personally that I need to fix.
It seems to be the mainstream message that if you're training 6 hours a day, or if you're an elite athlete, you need to fuel your body with carbohydrates. And obviously, that may be the case for some athletes, but it doesn't actually mean that they wouldn't perform better if they had less carbohydrates in their body. And tell me what you think of this, Dave. If you had 2 athletes, and one was eating 500 grams of carb a day, and the other one was a keto athlete, and they're both training exactly the same, and they're both performing well, but then they both stopped training. Okay, just imagine they both stopped training and you continued on the diet that you were on previously. Okay, it's pretty clear to me as a clinician what the health outcomes would be for the 2 athletes, because the athlete on the low carb diet would remain healthy, whereas the athlete on the high carb diet would very, very quickly become sick, because that diet is fundamentally going to drive inflammation up. So I think non-conjecturally, you can, on first principles, you can say that, okay, well, if you're relying on your training to maintain your leanness, that the diet is wrong, because you can maintain good health with no training at all on a low carb diet. Whereas if you're on a high carb diet and you suddenly stop training, you're immediately going to become unhealthy and insulin resistant and glucose intolerant. So
Yeah.
that to me is one of the fundamental principles. It doesn't have to be backed up by any scientific paper or randomized controlled trial. It's just a fundamental principle that tells me that a high carb diet is fundamentally less healthy than a low carb nutritional ketosis or carnivore style diet. So Dean, tell us a little bit about I think you mentioned that you're studying some formal nutrition education now. As a result of this sort of light bulb moment.
Yeah. So I mean, that's like I said, I had that history, and then I'd played around with ketosis and diets back in 2015 before I'd made the CrossFit Games again, because I wanted to revisit it. Because the side note for all this is the whole time, my main thing has been trying to cure asthma. And get off of these corticosteroids that you have to take every single day.
Yeah.
So reading into that side and health, like you just said, everything points to ketosis, low carb diets, calorie restriction, fasting, all that sort of stuff. And then everything to do with sports performance is like
the exact
whole
opposite. Yeah.
So I played around with that before. Then when I was going back into the games, you just do what the experts tell you. So I did that whole sort of thing. And I'd gotten pretty lean doing that and training for the games and stuff like that. And then to finish 2019, came back and I was like, this is just not working. And I no longer believe in it anymore. So I dive right into some longer fasts and full ketosis just to heal my back and go down that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And now I've started studying and doing a bachelor's degree in dietetic nutrition and stuff like that. So, and that's mainly just because I'm not even trying to really learn anything. I want to get to a point where I can speak from a respected point of view rather than just falling into the mix of people that are nutrition experts online.
Yeah.
So going and doing a doctorate or something like that, and having some, I don't know, there's respect that comes with that, I think.
Absolutely.
So, and I think like I'd read study after study, book after book on nutrition and ketosis in athletes, and there's a big problem at the moment. And you say like you said when we opened, I'm going against the grain in our sport for sure with this.
Yep.
Because every single study has looked at ultra endurance athletes, runners, stuff like that, and it's the easiest way because it's the easiest metric to study. You get someone on a recumbent bike or a run, and you monitor their energy output. And I truly believe that, and they're like, you can't go above 70% energy threshold from burning fat, and you can't do this and you can't do that. And I'm like, well, how do you know? Because maybe that's true in a endurance athletes, but then they're very rarely crossing 70 to 80% threshold. That, that those metabolic pathways are very untrained in when you look at compared to like a CrossFit athlete who's training those high-end thresholds and metabolic pathways all the time. So of course you're not going to see that, because if you take a CrossFit athlete and do an aerobic test, you're going to say that they're nowhere near up to the standard of an endurance athlete, and vice versa. So I just don't think that we have the knowledge and the information to back up what we're trying to say at the moment. And we have it in terms of testing carbohydrate loading in power athletes, because that's just what's been done. That was the conventional diet, carb loading for power athletes or endurance athletes. So it's documented to help because the information is there, it's been done. But it hasn't been done. Athletes haven't taken the time to become fully adapted. And most people from day one of being fed as a baby, bang, their ketosis is done and they never touch it again until they start to dabble with it as an athlete. And it's like, well, if you've got 20, 30, 40 years of no exposure
Yeah.
to your body knowing how to use this energy system and produce these substrates, you can't expect to feel good in 6 months' time.
That's exactly right.
Performing at 100%.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. It's sort of, I refer to that as the dogma, as a carbohydrate dogma. And dogma doesn't necessarily have any scientific foundations, but it's just what everyone does. So to go against the dogma, you know, people look at you and go, "What, you haven't eaten today, and you're doing a CrossFit workout? Surely that's going to affect your performance." But when you do understand the science, and when you do understand that it takes time for your metabolism to become fat adapted or keto adapted, then you can perform equally well. And that's why we're talking today, is because you are a testament to that you can perform in high power athletic endeavors and still be keto adapted. You don't need the carbohydrates. You can power your muscles through fat and protein, because we have a metabolic process called gluconeogenesis. You don't have to eat glucose to produce muscle glycogen. Okay, and this is the bizarre thing, that when professional athletes try to dip their toe in the water with a low carb diet, they just crash. Because they think that, I'll try to cut my carbs, even though, like you said, for the last 10 years I've been a high carb athlete. They just can't perform like that, because they haven't got the metabolism to run on that new fuel. But that doesn't mean that the science is wrong about nutritional ketosis being a...
No, and I think, like, you know, if you look at individual researchers, you know, like glycolytic refueling and keto-adapted athletes being faster than someone that's eating a high-carb diet, the same amount of glycogen saturation in the muscle and the liver, all of this stuff suggests that you should be able to perform just as well. And then people try and test it, and it doesn't seem to work that way. And it's like, but that's not a problem with, you know, your body's, or the science and the ability to do that. It's a body with your body's ability to do it, because it's not learnt how to do it.
You've got to induce all those enzymes, you know, those lipases, those fatty acid oxidation pathways need to kick in. And it's like anything, you know, if you're training to be an elite athlete, if you want to be the world's best, then you also need to have the world's best metabolism. And that doesn't happen quickly. So my little piece to athletes, you know, is that if you're going to have elite metabolism, you've got to start that early on in your career. You've got to start that early on in your career. You can't be a high carb athlete and then suddenly at the age of 30 or 25 go, I want to lean up a little bit. I want to address my body composition or my asthma or, you know, sore joints, and just quickly convert to a keto adapted athlete, because it's gonna be another 2 or 3 years to really reach that peak of performance on the world stage. And what we find in clinical medicine is that when people come to see you with disease, like lots of symptoms, you know, ankylosing spondylitis, rheumatoid arthritis, asthma, headaches, diabetes, obesity, hepatitis, and when we put those people onto low carb diets, they just get better. Better. So it doesn't make any sense to me why a top level athlete wouldn't also want to be on the fundamentally elite diet. Like, it doesn't, why would a top level athlete choose a diet that is suboptimal and unhealthy when they are trying to make their body perform at the highest possible level? You know, can you see, when I talk to people who are saying they have a kilogram of carbs a day, I was like, wow, you're eating the shittiest diet and you want to be the best athlete in the world. and it just doesn't make sense. But it won't ever make sense until we get past that dogma that you need to fuel your muscles with carbohydrate. And I'm so excited that someone like you is just out there putting it out there. So I'm trying to get as many people to follow your Facebook page, Animal-Based Nutrition, and it's obviously for athletes. But the information that you put on there is fantastic. Like it's also applicable to non-athletes as well. So yeah, I think
definitely. I think like you said, there's so many issues with nutrition. Like, firstly, when anyone wants to run a study, because of the state of nutrition globally, you're running a biased study from the get-go, because you're looking at people that are all only trained in one area, and that's burning carbohydrates and sugar. So you're already going to have a biased results if you try and do a ketogenic style diet.
Yeah.
You could go and scourge the earth, and you would not be able to find 100 athletes worldwide that are elitely trained in a fat adapted state, or something like that.
It's very hard.
It's
very
very
hard.
hard to get the correct data anyway. So I just use myself. I was like, I'm not going to find the data anywhere. It doesn't exist. But I can do it on myself and just commit to it. And just push through it. And since I've only gotten better, my injuries have gone away. My asthma, like I haven't used any asthma medication. Still train, still just as strong, beating all my old workouts. So, and I don't believe that carbohydrates don't have a place. Like, I think if I went to the CrossFit Games and wanted to try and win, I would use carbohydrates. But they're like,
it's just to push your blood sugar up to
throwing fuel onto the fire. But
so in your training, just this is probably a critical question that some members and CrossFitters will want to hear, is that so in your day-to-day training, pre-season or off-season, what would your carbohydrate load be? Like what would your macros be in terms of calories, grams of carbs, grams of fat, grams of protein?
So it's been a little bit of because I've been trying to trial different things, but where I fall is usually around, if I'm just trying to maintain weight, I'll eat about 3,000 calories a day, around 180 to 200 grams of protein, 40 to 80 grams of carbohydrates, and that's all from like some dark berries and a bit of honey. That's it. And most days I won't even have those carbohydrates. I'll just won't have them, and then the rest is from fat.
It's just your fats and your meats.
And I eat animal based, so like a part of what I'm trying to do is figure out what is triggering my immune system, and obviously my immune response is a bit more sensitive than a lot of people, being asthmatic and stuff like that, so I have to be even more restrictive. But I truly believe that and like you said with the group that I started, it's got nothing to do with or very little to do with elite athlete performance. It's just all about health. That's my so recently my mother just had a liver transplant. So she had cirrhosis of the liver, and she's also a type 2 diabetic, which is obviously self-inflicted disease.
It's lifestyle
Both
disease.
of them are self-inflicted.
Lifestyle disease,
And for years since I started this, I've been and it's probably half of the reason why I've gone down this journey so hard is being a lead by example for my family, because they're no nutrition training or anything like that. All about it's okay in moderation, all of this sort of stuff. Whole grain breads okay, white grain breads not okay. That traditional line of thinking. And I've battled with years to try and help her, and the sicker that she's got and the more time that she personally has spent going into doctors and getting different treatments, the worse that she has become, to the point then when she got became a type 2 diabetic. And when she called me and said I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, I said, I knew this day would come, and I think it's a blessing in disguise, because maybe now you'll take it seriously.
Yeah.
And start to really look at the foods you're eating.
Did the doctors ever
and then
say
she
to her?
progressed in.
Did the
and
doctors
got
ever
these
say to her
problems
to
with
cut back her
stuff.
carbs? Did the doctors
Yeah,
ever
I
say
did,
to her?
and
To, no, but the doctors themselves aren't telling her to do it. It takes you.
No.
It takes you, but it's the role of the doctors, and they're dropping the ball as well. I'm the first to say that. I'm part of the establishment, and it's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment that when patients come to see me as a neurosurgeon, I've got to talk to them about their diet. Like that's the job of the general practitioners. Like I shouldn't have to talk to patients about diabetes when I'm talking about their brain tumor, or their disc prolapse or something like that. It's ridiculous that I have to spend 20 minutes of my consultation educating them about nutrition. It's a huge failing. It's a huge failing, and it stems over into sport as well, because we know that if it's an unhealthy diet for a patient, it's an unhealthy diet for an athlete. There's no separation between an athlete and a patient. It's just, that's fundamentally it. But athletes just can't get past this idea that they can't perform on carbohydrates without their carbohydrates.
Yeah, and it's like the same thinking that is wrecking the medical society in the ways of medicating our ways out of illness.
Yes.
So, for example, I'd say to my mum, eat like this, and then she'd have to use less insulin.
Yes.
And then she'd go in to stay in the hospital for a week, and they'd feed her the diet that they recommend and stuff.
And the insulin goes up. Yeah.
Way up. And she would ask about it, and they go, oh, don't worry about it. Like, we'll just use some more insulin. It's not a problem.
It's mad.
And it's like,
mad.
that's a massive problem.
It is a massive, and then like when you look at the complications of diabetes, the chronic complications of diabetes are not linked to the blood sugar level. They're linked to how much insulin you need. So whether you get diabetic retinopathy, whether you get diabetic renal failure, whether you get peripheral neuropathy, it's linked to the insulin requirement. And if we can lower our glucose consumption, we also lower our insulin requirement, and therefore we reduce the diabetic long-term complications. It's not just about the blood sugar, because yes, you can control blood sugar beautifully with a high-tech insulin pump, and then you can eat your chocolate cake and whatever you want, and the insulin just surges through your blood to keep it under control. But that does not prevent you from getting the complications of diabetes. And it's just crazy that medicine is going, oh, it's okay, we've got insulin here, don't worry about that, you can eat whatever you like. And then even the Diabetes Foundation pumps out these recipes with chocolate cake and say it's okay, just monitor your blood sugar and adjust your insulin accordingly. It's
insanity. It's the same thinking that goes into sport of just we've got a band-aid solution, but no one wants to do the proper work to actually figure out like the proper pathways of fueling and the proper, how big do you actually need your aerobic base, for example, to then perform at the top level. Because I feel like although CrossFit is very fit athletes and stuff like that, I don't, if I was to develop the CrossFit Games a test for the fittest, it would be a different test. It's a lot of high-end testing and not a lot of aerobic capacity, and how that translates into a lot of other areas, including like long-term health, I'm not so sure. But I think there's a lot of nuances, and training, what people don't understand is CrossFit Games is a sport, and although they're claiming to test for the fittest person on earth, they're not claiming to test for the healthiest, most most long living person on earth. It's a very high output sport, high stress tolerance sport. And there's a big, like you would see in owning a CrossFit gyms, people want to train like they're training for the CrossFit Games. And that's not indicative to health or getting better as a human or living a long life. And it's like the sport and the CrossFit methodology of training are different things.
Yes.
But
It's
and that's the same in
interesting.
nutrition, and it's the same in every area, and we just can't get past that.
It's interesting though, when CrossFit, evolved, they had their nutrition formula, which was sort of the base of the pyramid, nutrition, mechanics, consistency, intensity. And the base of the CrossFit nutrition pyramid is actually a very low carb formula.
Well, it was zone and paleo.
That's exactly it. So I don't quite know how it's. I mean, obviously it's got corrupted in a way just because of the commercial value of processed carbohydrates that drives it, but and that dogma. But people and the elite athletes as well are ignoring that very original foundation of the nutrition being the fundamental base of performance. And I don't know who wrote that fitness in 100 words thing, probably Greg Glassman, but I think he was spot on, but it's now buried and sort of drowned in all the corruption with commercial food and the commercial side of fitness.
100% agree with you. And I think, as much as he sort of went off the Richter scale there at the end with his, being brash and the way that he is, what he was trying to do in 2019 was bring the whole focus back to that.
Back to health, CrossFit health.
He's seen, it's cool to see all these athletes and they're all ripped and lifting more weights than ever and all this sort of stuff. But this isn't going to help people get healthier, because
that's exactly right.
99.9% of people, are never going to have the genetics all the time to train like this. They're never going to get here, so it's not going to help them. Eating this, and that's why he had lawsuits with like Gatorade and Coca-Cola. And it was so funny because in, say, 2018, before the Marathon Row, he's in the middle of a litigation with Coca-Cola.
Absolutely.
And every single athlete at the games has got 24 packs of Gatorade.
It's nuts, isn't it?
And there's just this massive disconnect. To get through a 4-hour row. It's like, why are you drinking sugar to get through a 4-hour row when you're going to be at 50%?
You should be having your butter balls and things like that. If you want energy, get your energy from the fat and be keto-adapted. It's nuts. But
no one has it, and you watch what happened is most people couldn't walk for a day after. They're cramping up, So that's when I really started to see, like, oh, okay, this is no longer a sport of trying to find the fittest. Is now a definition not of health. Fittest is a definition of fit according to Dave Castro's version of this type of output.
And Dave Castro doesn't talk about the nutrition side of things really. But Lion Mode, just moving on into what your future plans are then, Dean. Obviously, Lion Mode is your brand in WA. Fremantle, is it?
Yeah, so we have 3 gyms over here.
Awesome, fantastic.
We did have, so we got 3 gyms over here. We do what I call as LPX, which is functional training, like CrossFit, but it's more structured. So we have, so our Monday through to Friday, we have a very set structure in terms of Monday's a cardio endurance day, Tuesday's a strength and conditioning, Wednesday's a HIIT class, Thursday's strength and conditioning, and Friday's kind of a hybrid cardio. And we try and put the focus is on hitting every energy system and strength every week rather than just doing Metcon. Just really driving people into the ground. And, that's how I always programmed anyway, and how most smart, people would train anyway. But the biggest issue with CrossFit lately is it seems to be that everyone just wants heavy barbells, fast workouts. it just leaves people injured and not really getting any better after about 6 months because they're only ever hitting one energy system
Yes.
and one stimulus.
Yes.
And I think that when I owned our gym in Wollongong, CrossFit Line Mode, that was one of the biggest things that we always faced, was overcoming that that stigma of CrossFit being super heavy, super fast, crushing you into the floor every single day of the week.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that appeals to some people, but it's like a drop in the ocean in terms of what the potential that CrossFit has. If you have good programming and if you have good coaching, CrossFit can apply to grandma, it can apply to bank manager, it can apply to accountant, and it has incredible potential to change the world, really. But it's going to take good affiliates and good coaching, good programming, attention to those really important elements. The good biomechanics is critical, and we always slam that down in our gym about biomechanics. And then to layer on top of that, or really it should be the foundations, but adding in the nutrition. Do you guys talk about nutrition in your gyms? Is there any sort of advice to members?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do a Friday, like a weekly recap for all our members every week.
Yep.
And usually it's on nutrition. It's like a blog on nutrition.
Yeah.
Like some of the stuff that I then post in the group on metabolic health, or what actually is, a fat, what is a protein, how is it metabolized by the body, all that sort of stuff. And what people don't understand, I think, they say, I want to do a Metcon. It's like, okay, but they don't even know what a Metcon is. And like, it's metabolic conditioning. How well can you take the stuff that you put into your mouth, turn it into energy, and then use that energy?
Yes.
And then the whole goal of the fitness industry is to improve metabolic health.
Yeah.
So you got metabolic conditioning and metabolic health, and they should go hand in hand.
Oh, God,
and that's the biggest thing that we need to educate people.
It is. And when it's so profoundly disconnected, isn't it? When yet we're doing something for health, and then we're doing something that's just hurting us. It doesn't make sense. And sometimes you can get a bit frustrated, but I think the level of understanding of science and nutrition science is so low. It's so poor. People don't understand the difference between a saturated fat, a polyunsaturated fat. They don't understand the difference between sugar and glucose and starch and flour. Of course they're going to get confused. And I think sometimes the industry purposely makes it confusing for people. The nutrition panel on foods. The nutrition panel on foods is confusing to people. Most people can't interpret a nutrition panel. So,
everyone's still stuck on calories in versus calories out.
Yep.
The harder you train, the more you hurt, the better.
Yep.
And the hard thing is that, and this is like what you said, is that there's truth in both of those things. Is yes, it does come into calories in versus calories out. It's not just all about what you eat. It is about how much you eat too.
Yeah.
Yes, there is a place for working really hard and pushing yourself to 100%.
Yeah.
But there's a bigger picture behind that.
Oh, it's got to be.
You know what I mean?
It's got to be put into the right context, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and companies spend how many millions of dollars just focusing on the one little area. It's all about calories. So you can have this with the stevia and the whatever. It's got no calories in it. Yes.
I think that's why Greg Glassman went he was like a rabid dog against the soda industry, because there's lots of things that compromise health, right? There's lots of things that compromise health: smoking, alcohol, drugs, other drugs, illicit drugs. But Glassman wasn't really a rabid dog against those things, because none of those things claim to be healthy. Okay. If you were selling heroin on the street corner or selling LSD or whatever, as a drug dealer, you're not telling everyone, hey, this is really healthy for you, this is good for you. Okay. The alcohol industry is not promoting that their product is healthy for you. But the soda industry was corrupt and was promoting it as health, promoting it as a healthy option and a healthy lifestyle option, which is the exact opposite, which is criminal. And I think that's where Glassman, as a libertarian, was just so rabid in his goals of just getting that message suppressed, because that was harming people. And you know, when he started CrossFit, it was about, you know, ultimately making people healthier, and fitness just comes along with it. Fitness just comes along with it if you make people healthier. And
and you know, like the like you said, the general knowledge just needs to be so much higher, because it's like people's understanding of like, okay, so you can have sugar and then you can have something that's sweetened with stevia, and still, even though you don't have the calories, you might still get a very similar insulin response.
Yeah.
So at the biological level, you're still getting a lot of the same issues in regards to, especially if you're a diabetic or something, you're still spiking your insulin.
Yep.
And stuff like, and causing inflammation and all this sort of stuff. So in that side, like, yeah, there's no difference between stevia and sugar. In fact, sugar might be the better option.
Yeah.
So yeah, but this is, like you said, is like, it's so hard for people that I study nutrition all day, every day, and I find it nearly overwhelming.
Yeah.
For someone who has kids, a job, just has 1 hour to go and train at the gym and get some quick advice, it's nearly impossible.
Yeah. Fantastic. I mean, you know, you're highlighting all the challenges, and I think, you know, it's enviable that someone like yourself, who's also trying to, you know, get back to the games, I'm sure, is also pursuing these incredibly virtuous challenges to help your members. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and that's why, you know, all I'm trying to do is now make connections with people like yourself, you know, who you're a neurosurgeon, you're also CrossFit box owner, and just make more connections with people that are educated, care about it, and we're all on the same mission. It's just like, no, we don't. There's no agenda except for trying to help you be healthier and actually enjoy being a human.
Yeah. It's, you know, pretty passionate. You don't really get much out of it. It's pretty thankless, but I think that's what passion is. You know, you don't expect thanks when you're passionate about something. And it's like, you know, I keep saying, I've got a little genie in the bottle here. I want to let it out. I want to give it to you, and it's got the potential to change your life and make you happy. And CrossFit is, you know, we're just one big community, really. We're you know, it's a great family. Like, you know, we just had a 1 hour chat, and I haven't even met you before, and it's been fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, let's there's no closing comments then, Dean. Just anything else you'd like to say to your members, because I'm sure your members will watch this as well when I send you the link. Closing remarks.
It's just no. Just
look out for you in 2021. The Open coming up in February. You're obviously are you sort of firing up for that training?
Haven't decided, to be honest. Haven't decided whether. It kind of depends on how the structure of everything is going to go.
Yes.
If it's anything like it has been, I'm not really that interested in it. I'd rather put all my time into this. Yeah. And help people this way. It's always been my bigger passion, is to help people with nutrition, because it's my core belief that 99.9% of everything that goes wrong with us is nutrition. Based.
Absolutely.
And that's what, you know, that is my bigger passion, bigger than competing and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, no, that's not a belief. That's a fact. I mean, it's 90% of medical conditions are diet and lifestyle related. 10% are things like accidents and trauma and poisonings, and you know. But 90% of disease is preventable. 90% of the burden of disease in Australia globally is actually preventable with lifestyle choices. And those lifestyle choices are predominantly diet related. All right, Dean, mate. Once again, thank you so much for talking to me, and let's stay connected. Happy to be involved or help out, or catch up again in the future.
Yeah,
And,
definitely. My whole goal is just building this this animal-based nutrition network, and hopefully turning it into a place where multiple practitioners and doctors and nutritionists all collaborate with people. Work with people like low carb down under and paleo FX and all that. So that's where I want to get to. I want it to be the hub of this movement moving
Actually,
forward.
I know the guy who started Low Carb Down Under. You would be someone who would be fantastic to do one of their little seminars.
So that's where I'm trying to go now, is into obviously growing the podcast, talking to people like Tim Noakes and all of these guys, and getting into that community and just going around and using myself as like, hey, this is what I've done, and this is the science behind it.
And just a testament that it's not hypothetical anymore. It's not a theory. You can be the fittest on earth and perform with 50 grams of carbohydrates or less per day.
Don't need 800 grams of carbohydrates. White bread and Gatorade.
800 grams of carbohydrate. One of the elite CrossFitter said to me that when he goes on holidays, he loses weight. When he trains, he puts on weight, because when he trains, he's eating, massive volumes of carbohydrate when he, to sustain his training. But when he goes on holidays and he cuts back, because he's not training very much, he cuts back on carbs and he loses weight. For every other human being, they put on weight when they go on holidays because they're eating carbs. Isn't that nuts? That was a funny little thing that I heard. I thought, oh my gosh, you are just being poisoned by your carbohydrates there.
Oh, the amount of inflammation that people walk around with, elite athletes, especially.
It's
crazy.
All right, then we might end it on that, and let's stay in touch. I'll catch up with you again later.
Yeah, sure, mate. Thanks for speaking to me. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, then. Bye now.
See you, mate.